Good morning. So this morning we're going to build on more shoulder work, building on what we talked about last week. Last week was a little bit more about just getting acquainted with the shoulders, kind of understanding the wheres, the whys, the hows of the shoulders, how to shoulder set so that you could get that optimal space in the joint, so that you could start to begin your process of loosening up some stuff in there that you could add in there the strength that you want to build on after you've sort of unraveled things. So we're going to get right into it. Got a lot to cover. So for a moment here, I just want to reference back to the bones. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the muscles involved with that, because the bones really don't do anything without the muscles, and sometimes the muscles get bossed around. No, the bones get bossed around by the muscles. So the main muscles we're going to look at this morning are the pecs, which are in the front, pec minor, pec major, and then we're going to look at the rotator cuff muscles in the back. And so very briefly or very rawly, we're going to say that there's the three external rotators. So there's the supraspinatus here that comes across the top of the shoulder blade, attaches to the arm bone, the infraspinatus that's below, and then the teres minor that's below. So there's three external rotators that run across the back of the scapula, attaching to the back of the arm bone. So you can see that they would have a certain effect of externally rotating the arm or making for extension in the arm. And then in the front, like I mentioned, we had the pecs. So the pec in the front of the rib cage, that pec major attaches to the arm bone, kind of across like this. And then the minor actually comes up a little more on a diagonal across the ribs and attaches to the scapula. So that's why when those guys are tight, it can start to pull that arm bone forward and the scapula forward and down. Like we talked about last week, it kind of creates a little cap or a roof that doesn't allow the arm to move as freely and optimally as it can. So this morning we're going to be working on releasing the pec muscles and really activating or strengthening or even awakening the rotator cuff muscles in the back. Now, here's the joint space, if you can kind of see. It's not really, it's considered a ball-in socket, but it's not really a huge socket that's holding on to the ball there. It's very loose, it's very open, which is the great thing about the shoulder, because it can have a lot of ability and range, but also kind of the scary thing because it's a little more vulnerable. And that's why shoulders get so many more injuries, and that's why the muscles around kind of hang on for a little bit more protection and to help you stay stable in that joint. So what we're looking at here, for if you can take my bowl and ball for example, this is going to be the socket. Clearly it's not deep like this, but you know, just indulge me for a moment. So imagine this is the socket facing kind of this way. Now, for most of us, let's say this is the center here. For most of us, we're forward in the socket and down. So that's where that arm bone, the ball of that socket, kind of lives. We need to work to get it back to the more of the center. So today you're going to see some of the exercises we do work the ball towards the back and upper part of the socket, if you can kind of see, so that it gives you the other end of the range so that we can find that middle ground. So again, we tend to live forward and down in the socket, stuck there. That whole back part of the socket is getting neglected, not getting used. That can start to cause things like arthritis and just lack of range of motion. So we're trying to get today in our exercise to get the ball to go experience what it's like to be in the back range of the socket and up, so that we can find that center. Okay, is that clear so far? So the first exercise that we're going to get into is going to be on the floor. So you're going to want to find the floor, put a mat down. It could be a little bit harsh on the hip bones, so let's go for it. Okay, so you're going to come down into Sphinx position. Now in this particular Sphinx, I want your elbows in front of the shoulders, maybe like 2 to 3 inches. And about shoulders width apart, maybe a little wider if you need. So from here, you want to slump. I call this slumpy sphinx. Now, a lot of times you get here and you're like, oh no, that's so couple. We're not supposed to shrug. We're not supposed to slump. Please do. You should be slumping right now. What this is helping us to do is we're using our own body weight against the leverage of our arm to move those shoulders up. This is going to help stretch that pec minor, especially, giving us some length there, which is hard to find. It's also giving us a little chance to shorten the traps, which we talked about last week, can get big, bossy, and grippy. So we're giving them a little bit of a break here. And it's also helping to squish those shoulder blades a little more in, giving them a chance to feel that inner range. This is what I'm talking about, is the ball now is sort of back and up in the shoulder socket. So you're gonna just continue to slump here, careful not to hang the head, but keep the head neutral. And then we just start to shift the weight side, getting so heavy on that one side, and then to the other side. And you'll do this several times. I'm gonna, of course, do a quick version just so you get the gist, but then you're gonna wanna stay real heavy as you go to each side. After several sets of that, stay on the one side, and then you're just gonna take your hand and just place it on your forearm. Feel the elbow now. Try to squeeze in gently towards midline and stay heavy towards that side. So now I'm activating my elbow in a little bit, and you'll feel different things going on just depending on what's going on in your shoulder. Stay slumped. Try not to push out of it. And then, of course, doing that to the other side. So you're going to shift, replace your forearm, just sort of helping you to balance on that side, and now pull that right elbow in, staying on that side. So you might feel a little bit of activation in the rotator cuff muscles and some stretching going on in the deltoids, the pecs. It's different for everyone, just depending on what's tight. And come back to the center. So you can do that several times. The next part now starts to bring you through activation now that we've released a few things. So you're going to just be in a half slump, not quite as slumped, and then you're just simply going to squeeze the elbows towards each other and then relax. Stay heavy on those elbows and then squeeze them in and relax. Squeeze in and relax. Now you're going to squeeze in, keep the squeeze in, and now add a pull back. So without readjusting my elbows, I'm just isometrically pulling the elbows back energetically and then releasing all of those connections. So the elbows are going to hug in and pull back and slowly release. Again, narrow and squeeze the elbows, pull back and release. Meanwhile, I'm keeping my abdominals in gently, keeping my hips grounded, my pubic bone especially, and my legs are long behind me. So that exercise, once again, after you've done all the slumping, is just a gentle elbows in, helping to create external rotation. As you get more warmed up, the hands can fan out, and then you add the pull back, and you just hold it for a couple of seconds, feel a little bit of a shiver in there, and then release. Okay, so that's slumpy sphinx. Now we're going to go into rotator cuff with TheraBand. You can also do this with a little hand weight, very light. When you're working the rotator cuff muscles, you want to work light, low resistance, high reps, because the rotator cuffs, you want to build them as an endurance muscle. They want to be there for you long term, all day, helping you with your posture, not just wham bam, cool. Yeah, so we want to build the strength for long term lasting results. So grab your TheraBand. And again, lightweight. Ideally, you can do this standing so your foundation is really solid, but I don't want to keep moving you around with this camera, so I'm just going to work kneeling here, which is perfectly fine as well. Make sure you set up equally on your legs. Find a nice supportive neutral pelvis, neutral spine. And then we're going to set the shoulders up, back, and down, just like we learned last week. Now you're going to hold your straps kind of like what you were just in with the Sphinx position or the slumpy Sphinx position. The elbows are going to be a little bit more in front of you, several inches Most of us are probably used to doing this with the elbows right directly at our sides. Now, if you look closely, do you see where my bone is? It's kind of forward. Now, this might not be everyone's situation, but this is most of our situations. So, like I talked about earlier with the bowl example, I don't really want to be working my rotator cuff with that ball forward in the socket. I want it to be back. And for me, the only way that I can get that ball dropping back and in more to the center of my socket is to take the elbows a little bit more forward. So with that, you also want to see in the front that the elbows are narrower than the hands. Reset the shoulders, and then on an exhale, feel the elbows hug towards center, widen the hands pulling on your strap, and then relax. So similar to the slumpy sphinx, you're going to narrow the elbows in towards each other, let that leverage out your hands to pull on your strap, and release. So we're pulling both at the same time to start. And narrow to pull, and release. So cue your elbows first. Elbows hug in, hands widen, and then hold here. Hold this last one for just maybe 2 extra breaths, and release. Then you can add individual pulses. So from the preset, from a slight pull, maybe just like 10% effort, now let's add a couple pulls just on the one side, cueing it from the elbow in first. That's going to lever the hand wide. That's going to pull on the tension of your strap. Go ahead and make sure you do the other side. I would recommend doing about 10 repetitions on each side, taking a break, and then coming back again. But always starting off with the double pull. And always ending, once again, with the double pull. Elbows hugging in, hands widening. Make sure the wrists don't break in any direction. They stay nice and straight. And then you would rest in between. When you rest, let your arms just hang by your sides. See what your shoulders naturally want to do. So those are the exercises for this morning. So you got Slumpy Sphinx, and you've got the rotator cuff exercise with a slightly different set of cues than you might be used to. So give it a try, see how you like it. I highly recommend that you prep these exercises with the exercises from the hip flexor back video 2 weeks ago. Set your lower body, get your pelvis, get your core body set. That will give you the best results for this shoulder work. So you don't want to come into it cold. You want to wake up kind of that core of you first, and then be able to add in those deep, detailed shoulder exercises. I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to cover this morning. I hope that's going to help you guys out to start to now add in the new layer of strength to the release work that we've talked about and worked on last week with the shoulder setting. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And also, and if there's any questions you have for future Facebook Live talks, we can address some of those things. I know in the future I'd like to address some plantar fasciitis, neck, things like that. All right, you guys, wonderful to see you this morning through the telephone. Okay, aloha.